Hello, winners, and welcome once again to the Wrong Button Podcast, the show where we talk all things nerd, most things video games, and genuinely anything else that tickles our fancy. Hey, Snips.
Oh, Jesus Christ. What? My jaw hit the floor, 22 hours ago, and I haven't picked it up since.
So, I'm... Fun fact, winners. This is a completely remote podcast because I am in another state, talking with people at work who have been like, it's been, the show's okay. And then this episode, everyone's like, hey, yeah, are you watching that new Star Wars show? And I'm like, yeah, I've been talking to you about it all week. And you all have been like, meh.
Yeah. I think that perfectly sums up the Star Wars fan base, especially the more casual audience, those who haven't watched a lot of the animated shows, maybe missed some of the actual live action shows too. It's been met with like some confusion. People don't know the backstory. Even some Rebels fans like myself and yourself have seen like a couple of issues here and there. However, I think all of those get absolutely trumped with this episode.
This episode was fantastic.
Yeah, my initial thoughts, start to finish, were that of, oh my god, Dave Filoni's done it again. I don't know if I've watched such riveting Star Wars content like this. Well, I guess since Andor, but in a completely new sense. Like with Andor, you're dealing with side characters, and we're very much in the main character chosen one territory. You know what I'm saying? And
I think this is also kind of making Jedi cool again. 2023.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, definitely dust off those stingy old robes, because we're not in the we're not in the Republic anymore, Grandpa.
Yeah. Should we start starting with the top of the show?
Yeah, sure. I had a couple of issues with the top of the show, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
When we start in on the show, it's Huyang doing all of the electrical work, like all the repair work on their cruiser. Why wasn't it Ahsoka? Like, Ahsoka was the default engineer during the Clone Wars. Like, it was always Ahsoka getting into the nitty-gritty of things. But I guess if you're Huyang and you have 25,000 years of experience, you probably know a thing or two.
I'm also betting like that's an older ship. Like it's like oh, to him it's like, oh, this is a ship that I knew very well. So I feel like
true, it has been in the Jedi Order for a while. So
yeah, I feel like you said, that feels like an old Jedi cruiser. Like it's not a fighter, but it's definitely more of like a live in, we can go here, and for our Jedi who are away a lot can live in this and be comfortable.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And that's how a lot of people have been pointing out that there was like a lot of High Republic kind of art on the ship, whether it be like, I think there's the tiles, the way some of the shelvings were set up. So it's an old ship, sure. So obviously they're still down in the forest. Balin's sending his guards after them, which is useless against a Jedi, a pseudo Jedi / Mandalorian, whatever you want to call Sabine. And Huyang, who showed off that he had some boxing skills, which he had HK droids coming after him. I thought we were about to witness the death of Huyang in that scene. Thankfully not. I don't know if I've ever been so worried about somebody's like status in the show than his, because I'm very much of the whole, he's lived for 25,000 years, please don't kill my guy,
It's especially when you like kind of see what starts happening it towards like the middle part of the series or of this show. You're right. That was the one time where it was like Huyang. Did you also think that the HK droids here went down a lot easier than earlier on?
Oh yeah, I think so. It definitely seemed like that, but I mean, it definitely Sabine and Ahsoka have the experience fighting them now, so maybe it's like a familiarity.
But like Sabine literally turns with her blaster and just puts one into the head of the one, and that's it. And I was like,
she's always been a skilled marksman, though. You know
that. I guess I'm thinking that the HKs are kind of like fighting the, would be like fighting the assassin droids, where it's like, oh, I took off like one of your limbs, and they're like, ha, I don't care. You took off my head. I'm still gonna swing about and cause damage if you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So that was. It did feel like they got jobbed a little bit, and if you want to say, well, Huang got some lucky hits in there, sure. But yeah, his boxing and then pulling out the fourth arm, and then he'd fix the ship and then turned around and made it worse to signal them like, hey, we're in the place.
Yeah, which I love how he was screaming for help as a droid, and then it cuts back to Ahsoka and Sabine in the ship just having like a nice moment together, which. I was sitting there the entire time like, my guy's outside, go help him. And so once the lights turn off, Sabine's like, oh, that dusty old, was it Dusty she used? Or like Daffy?
Made the situation worse, yeah.
And Ahsoka's immediately like, no, I know Huang doesn't mess up on things like this. I know my old droid companion. That fight scene between the HK and Huang, I think, was one of arguably my favorite fight scene of the show, actually, of this episode. Which there were a lot of really good fight scenes. Don't get me wrong. I just enjoyed the robot boxing, basically the droid boxing. It kind of felt like the Rock'em Sock'em robots back in the day.
I want to know if Dave Filoni was inspired by that for Huang.
Oh my god, me too. It seemed like it.
He's more articulate than like C-3PO is, but you can still tell that he's not built like an assassin droid. So when he threw the punches, and it was like, no, you're moving like a boxer. You don't have you have to have it all like upper body, because you can't like pivot and get the full flail in there. But it makes sense that he would fight like a boxer and not do some other martial arts or grapple or anything like that. So I like the fact, because when he does it, he assumes a stance, and he's got like his gloves would have been up, his hands were up, they were up by his face, protecting the chin. Like, it was protecting a lot of really good stuff. I thought it was a lot of subtle details. The Rock'em Sock'em robots, though, that's now making me think like, yeah, that's totally a thing.
Well, I was gonna say, Huang's been practicing forms with Jedi for 25,000 years. I feel like he would be the guy to keep his form and his composure while being under attack. Yeah, so
aside from also being a droid.
Yeah, aside from being a droid, of course. But, they make pretty quick work of the HKs once they get out there together. I did enjoy, by the way, Huang's eyes throughout the entire show. Like, you could see when he's like angry or he's fighting, you could see like they turn into like little slits. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool. Yeah, they make quick work of the HKs. And eventually it cuts back to Hera. I think it was was it right after that that fight?
It was like right after that fight, I think. So Ahsoka and Sabine, like, he's like, you're about like so Ahsoka and Sabine are like, I think it was either several or 12 clicks out. Which, by the way, that's a bit of a run. Especially when you think that you have to possibly fight people in it. And then as soon as they say that, I think Huang says, hey, stay together. You guys were always better that way. And then as soon as that, like, I thought that was just a really heartfelt moment of, hey, you two bring out the best of each other. Like, don't get split up, work together, make this right.
I thought that was actually a little bit of foreshadowing too. When I was watching that initially, he was like, "Oh, you guys are always better together," and I immediately went to, "Oh crap, they're about to get separated for some dumb reason," because that's what always happens to master and apprentices. I'm looking at you, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan. It's Qui-Gon's.
Didn't you just wait for me?
Yeah, I was gonna say it was Qui-Gon's fault. He got for a reason, or Obi-Wan and Anakin, multiple times actually. And it was both of them at certain points. But yeah, and then it goes back to Hera on the fleet, who did not realize this, but the capital ship, the Mon Calamari, the Mon Cal capital ship there, is actually, that belonged to Admiral Akbar. So that's
it looked familiar.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's like the ship from 3.
Yeah.
Or from 6.
I think, yeah, from 6. So I thought that was a cool tidbit. And I also thought it was pretty cool that Hera was directly disobeying the New Republic government's orders. And taking her son with her, too.
Hey, look, once a rebel, always a rebel, and raise him young.
Yeah. I just love the line from Jace of, like, why do you not get to, like, follow orders, but I have to? And Hera snaps back.
When you become a general, you can disobey orders, too.
I was like, that is classic Hera right there. And I was...
But it was also like a parenting thing. Like, I remember my one of the deals, I'm going to tell you guys a dark secret of my history. So, my mom raised me very, like, conservatively. Mom, when you listen to this, it'll come through. But her joke was always, when you become my age, because you can have someone spend the night with you and sleep in the same bed as you. Otherwise, you have to be married. And that was just my mom's kind of rule out the gate. So it eventually became 27 because my older sister brought home a boyfriend one night when my mom wasn't home. I'm like, well, you allowed it to happen. And so after that, it was 27. I was allowed to have, my then fiance, now wife, like stay in the same room as me when we were down there. But that was always the joke, and that's what I felt from Hera. I was like, oh, I remember those jokes.
Yeah, that was definitely a classic parenting move right there. Definitely, I loved how she broke with the fleet, and she definitely assumes this. You guys don't have to follow me. I'm going to do this because I believe in it. Kind of mantra. And the New Republic officer with her, I'm blanking on her name, or on his name.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Was really trying to talk her out of it and could not.
So the officer's name is Hawkins. So it's Lieutenant Hawkins, which I thought was that's the most generic of generic military lowly lieutenant names.
Yeah, kind of like Williams or, like, I don't know, Burke to me. Definitely stereotypical for a military name. You're right. I think this was definitely one of the moments where we got to see Hera more in her element. One of my things about the portrayal of Hera is I always thought that during her scenes in Rebels, she was a lot feistier, and I just feel like we haven't seen that side of Hera for the most part. But as I try to explain to myself why we don't see that part of Ahsoka, it's age maybe. She is a mother now. The war's over. The stakes, while still high, aren't dire. So
war's over. She is a mother now, and like as a general, she also now has to think a lot about the good of the fleet, the good of everything that's going on going forward. So I think that's the I think that's really the best the way to look at it. Like Ahsoka now, it's also because I've had a few other people bring up to me like, well, she was always this feisty character who was. I'm like, but look at her at the end of Tales of the Jedi. Look at her at the end of even the Clone Wars. She was much more reserved. When she said something, it was typically very cutting. When she goes to beat Maul, and it's like, she like takes him out or gets ready to fight him. I was like, I was hoping Anakin would be here, and she's like, why? So you can get beat by both of us. And then even at the end when she releases him, he goes, "Can I have a weapon?" And she goes, "I need you to distract them, not win." So she, even there, she's much more cold and calculated. I think after the Jedi Order, like, she was tempered a lot. And for a self-protective mechanism, I think her now also being, okay, she's colder, she's trying to be a teacher. She has failed horribly as a teacher once. So I think now she's trying to find that balance, and I want to say she's overcorrecting some, and also, not sharing to like the full extent, because it's her first time doing it, much like how, Anakin struggled at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, very, very well said. I definitely, I agree with you in some points, but I think a part of her personality now is I think she's still disillusioned with everything that happened. The fall of the Jedi, her leaving the Order, Anakin's fall especially. I don't know if she really forgave herself from that. And the line she had about Anakin to Huang a couple of episodes ago, where she essentially said that I abandoned him, and my master never got to finish my training. I definitely think she hasn't got over that. It's pretty big trauma to unpack. So I definitely think that's kind of where we're seeing Ahsoka's character. But for Hera, it just, I'm really waiting to see the passion from her. Just up a notch. Not too crazy, just up a notch.
I think in the next few episodes, now that like some of the team, I have a feeling by the end of this, the band's gonna be back together, for the most part. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't have Zeb come in for a hot episode or two.
I was surprised that we didn't see Zeb, actually.
I was surprised that he wasn't on the ship, but he was also like, he was hanging out in the one bar at the end of The Mandalorian, when like Mando was going for help.
Yeah, and I really thought he would have been back with the fleet at that point. We saw what's the primary New Republic officer's name? He was flying the X-wing, made the appearance in this show with Hera, actually.
Yes, the eight. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'll look up his name right now.
It was Carson Teva. It was him, and it was, I think it was the base where his X-wing squadron was stationed on, where Zeb was. So, when Carson and his squad showed up, I was kind of surprised we didn't get any Zeb, but I'm almost willing to bet that he's going to be in the show somewhere, because there's no way we get a show about a Rebel sequel and we don't get Zeb. That's just not how it happens.
I agree.
I really appreciated that Hera came as fast as she possibly could to come in aid Sabine and Ahsoka. And then we get into Ahsoka and Sabine's trek through the forest.
Yes.
Where they're eventually encountered by Merrick, everybody's favorite Sith Inquisitor of the week, because I've just heard nothing but Merrick for the last week and a half. Like, who's Merrick? Oh, he's somebody. He's Starkiller. He's Ezra. It's not that.
He's the last Inquisitor. He is very much the Inquisitors, as far as I'm aware, or my opinion. Did you ever watch Power Rangers back in the day?
I did, but not too much.
But the idea of the villain of the week, where it's like, okay, we got like maybe 2 episodes, they're in it for like maybe 2 or 3, and then like that villain, that monster is just destroyed.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's all that the Inquisitors have been from
their inception, really.
Yeah, when we first see them in, we saw him first in Rebels, right?
Yeah, I think it was because it was the Grand Inquisitor. He wasn't the first one we saw, but. Yeah, I think the Inquisitors did make their debut in Rebels, so.
And yes, go ahead. You were talking. We get to their trials and tribulations in the forest with Merrick and young Padawan Ren.
Yeah. Right off the get go, I thought the pause before the fight was so uncomfortably long, where they were just staring down each other, and Shin's like going somewhere, and they just were sitting there looking at each other for a solid 10 seconds, and I could almost you could almost just like cut the tension with a knife, you know. Like, it was
And I
that
mean,
thick.
the key thing here is so Merrick and Ren go to meet him because Elizabeth, no Morgan, I'm sorry, uh, she says, she sends out the HK droids, and Balin goes, those won't hold him for long, but you two will. And he looks at Ren and Merrick, and so their job there, the fight taking long and them not engaging, one is incredibly intelligent on their part, because the only person that those two could take would have been Sabine by herself.
Yes, there's no way Shin's taking on Ahsoka, and I think that was beautifully demonstrated. It actually, if you're familiar with the show Avatar: The Last Airbender, during the Day of Black Sun, Princess Azula is sent to essentially distract Team Avatar as they're trying to find the Fire Lord and end the war early.
Mm-hmm.
She preys on their she preys on their emotional weaknesses and then wastes all of their time during this eclipse. So like firebenders can't firebend during that time. If you watch the show, you get it. And I thought that was like a very well done scene, and I thought applying that to Star Wars, it had the same sort of value to it,
Almost like the same writer and creator helped work on it.
I think Filoni only stayed on Avatar for the first season, I think.
Oh, okay. I was like the first one or two.
Yeah, because I think that's when he started to pivot and then work on Star Wars. But I could be messing up my Dave lore. So if he's listening, give me a call, Dave. We can talk about it. The fight I thought was really cool. Sabine fighting off against Shin as a Mandalorian I thought was interesting. That she was reverting to her blaster pistols and fighting really the way that she knew she had the best chance of winning. Kind of interesting that she didn't go for her saber immediately. And then the fight between Ahsoka and Merrick, it was almost showboating on Ahsoka's part. The fact that she only pulled out one lightsaber.
Okay, so I have theories for this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so guys, you have to bear with me and listen to me nerd out for a couple moments. Mrs. Play, if you're listening to this, you know what I'm about to say.
Are you going to get in the form? Wait, I'm so excited for this.
All right, flipped up my arms. So, if you look back in the day, and so when I'm saying back in the day, I want you to go like pre-Edo era Japan, and I also want you to go like pre-chivalrous ages of Great Britain. One of the ways that you would settle disputes was with a duel, right?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Sorry. So, you settle those you settle a dispute with a duel. Now, in Japan especially, you only brought one sword to your duel. I know a lot of people see, the samurai with the two blades, the tanto, and then the full katana or the uchi, like whatever the longer version is, zanpakuto versions. But you only fought with one because to fight with two of them was to be a barbarian. Like you weren't fighting with honor, you were fighting with partial strength. If you read the Path of the Jedi book, Anakin kind of gives Ahsoka some like jibes for using like a two-hand reverse blade stance because it doesn't make her stronger. However, when she's talking about like deflecting lasers with the Force and lightsabers, it makes sense why she does that. So, my theory was Merrick is the last Inquisitor, and so he got enough respect to be like, I'm going to fight you with one blade. And then secondly, if you notice the way that lightsaber is constructed, it is a little bit of a curved hilt, but it's curved in the way that like a katana might also kind of be there to give her more force.
That very
so
slight
this actually,
curve, yes. Okay, yeah.
It gives her, when she comes down now with both arms, she will be able to strike at him physically stronger than if she used, say, both lightsabers. So I do think that one was a twofold. And by the end of that fight, because that fight was
Merrick never
pretty boring.
He never had a chance. And right when I knew that they were going to be facing off together, I knew that we were going to see the end of him right then and there. Because of the way Ahsoka essentially toyed with him when they fought first on Corellia. That he didn't have a hope in the world.
And you learn that like Corellia, that was to be like, okay, well, what's actually going on here? That was about biding time to get information. Because when he recalls back his lightsaber and she just turns,
yeah.
like she's like, I know it's coming, and she turns ever so slightly and then like resumes her forward facing. I don't think she even moves her feet.
Never did.
She pivots her torso, and that to me is like, oh, you don't even have me off balance. I'm not off center. You literally mean nothing to me in a fight.
That was the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen Ahsoka do toward an enemy. I mean, that, like, tell me you don't value your opponent without telling me you don't value your opponent. So it was already the beginning of the end. But the interesting thing about this fight is she was in Form 1 for this fight, which I don't recall ever seeing Ahsoka use Form 1, whether it be through the Clone Wars, Rebels, in The Mandalorian, which I thought was interesting because that's the form of her Masters, a.k.a. Qui-Gon, the Form 1 demon himself. So, it's definitely a form where you... And I'm a little rusty on my lightsaber forms, admittedly, but... she was very, very focused, very thorough with looking for her, for her strikes. And it was a very quick fight too, as Merrick's doing that trademark Sith Inquisitor, my blade goes Beyblade. You could see her just calculating what strike she needed to take him down. And take him down she did. So I thought it was beautiful.
So Form 1 is Shicho.
Yes.
And it is, fun fact, it is the form of determination. Thank you, Wikipedia.
Wikipedia is amazing, by the way. Shout out. Not just Wikipedia, but the Wookiees who run it. So
you're the real MVPs. Yeah, and if you that form is a very basic stance. It is a lot of swift chopping, coming in at the right angle, and that's also the form that we see, Obi-Wan take Darth Maul down, because it's meant to be very quick and decisive movements with very minimal wasted effort, or nothing is wasted on anything extra flashy and flamboyant. We even see that Balin does that for the first episode when he comes in. Like I said, everybody's aiming center mass because that's what you do. Mm-hmm. So when he's deflecting all the blasts, he's just moving his lightsaber enough, and it's not the when you watch like Anakin or Obi-Wan do it in the first movie, where they shoot at him and then he physically moves the saber down with the blast to reflect it back. This is pure, I don't need to waste a lot of energy on this type of movement.
Yeah. Also, I think one of the most basic lightsaber forms too.
Yes.
Yeah, great spot, because it did remind me of Obi-Wan taking down Darth Maul. Definitely, I think as Jedi grow older too, I really believe that they start to rely on Form 1 more. And then, on the other side of the forest, Shin and Shin and Sabine are having their fight. Pretty evenly matched, which I thought was really cool. Obviously, Shin is more talented in the Force, has had more formal lightsaber training. I really think Sabine held her own once she was forced to use her saber. Even when she lost the saber, she still fell back on her Mandalorian ways of blocking like the lightsaber with what are the Mandalorian
The Vespar?
What's it called? The guards, like on her.
The bracers,
yes,
like on her wrist.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool scene. Beskar is a hell of a material.
It's so I know a lot of people. When it comes to a saber fight, no, Sabine is. I disagree. I don't think Sabine was holding her own. I think physically, she is more than capable to be a match for Shin. Like if you were to be like, okay, here you guys just kind of like slug it out, run, slug, do whatever you need to do, come out on top. Yes, she would win. When the blades got involved, I think it's going to be a while before Sabine finds a way to blend the two, like be herself. Because at one point she sits there and you watch her like do the force hand thing, like she's gonna throw back Ren, and you watch like her defend herself and like throw up like she's getting attacked. And when she's like, "Oh, you can't use the force," she quickly uses the grapple that was given to her in Rebels. And I was like, "Okay, you're using what you know, and if you don't have the force, there's nothing wrong with you using that in a way to fight." And I think that's a great. I think that is great compensation, and I think, Kanan was wrong when he's like, you guys lost for a reason. You can't rely on cheap tricks. Like, it's not a trick, it is a utility.
Yep.
But because you have the Force, you see anything that's not the Force as a cheap trick.
Like, I'm sorry that we're not all gifted like you, Kanan. Alright?
Sorry I didn't watch my master die.
Trademark of being a Jedi is what? Give me one Jedi Master that passed away peacefully outside of Yoda.
Ooh.
Oh, wait.
One Jedi Master that passed away peacefully. Mm-hmm. Anakin.
He got electrocuted. I mean...
yeah, but at the end of it,
he was still dying from his injuries, though. I mean...
Luke?
You're going down a path I cannot follow.
I don't have an answer. I actually don't have my only legitimate answer there would be Obi-Wan, because I think Obi-Wan never got touched by Darth Vader. He was literally like,
fair.
Okay, I can inspire the kid. My job's done. Vanish.
True. Obi-Wan is a great point. It's he didn't.
If not peacefully, at peace.
I wish I would have been alive in 1977 to see Obi-Wan just disappear like that. That had to have been like a watershed moment in a lot of Star Wars fans' lives. Like, oh my God, where did that space wizard go? He's just gone. But yeah, so Balin was right. They delayed Ahsoka and Sabine, but not for long.
I want to go back real quick to one thing real quick, and this is like my nitpicky English major storyteller.
Oh, here we go.
I'd like them to drop the smoke screen and the fact that they're hinting that Sabine can't see with the Force. If you noticed, right? So there are a couple things that we kind of went over in the beginning when Sabine and Ahsoka we're like, okay, we're gonna track them down, we're gonna get to them, they're a couple clicks away. Ahsoka goes incredibly pragmatic and says, hey, sometimes the best thing is for nobody to get this. Yes. If it comes down to it, can you destroy the globe? Like, you can't see Ezra ever again, this just ends here. Can I trust you to do that? And Sabine goes yes, but you can also see that Ahsoka knows that she cannot trust Sabine to do that.
And if you think about it, Ahsoka comes from the longest line of people who are not able to set apart their attachments, save for maybe Obi-Wan. Because that's that's coming from the Padawan of the poster boy for attachment issues, aka Anakin.
Yeah, Obi-Wan definitely is the only one more at peace with it, but he is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, I think at one point Balin sits there and makes something of is like, oh, they won't be here. They won't be stalled for long. And Morgan goes, is that a note of fear I have in your voice? And Balin goes, experience. So we now know that he knows who Ahsoka is, and we do find out he knows who Anakin is. He knows who Anakin
knows
became.
Everything. And I'm really enjoying Balin's Ray Stevenson's portrayal of Balin. As I've said on this podcast, I think every single episode, that I don't know if we've been introduced to characters quite as interesting than Balin and Shin. It's always a telltale sign of really great character building when you are just dying to know more of somebody. And I think that's how the audience has been a lot, myself included, with Balin. Like, his past, he's a fallen Jedi, but how? He's not exactly a Sith. It seems like he's more in control of his emotions than a lot of bad guys throughout Star Wars were. It really actually brings us into our next scene of Ahsoka getting to the star map, getting to the globe as the coordinates are being transferred up to the hyperspace ring. And
whatever that nonsense voodoo witch magic technology was, where it's magic but it's still feeding the computer.
Yeah, I know.
It was, yeah. Oh, it's so weird.
It's Star Wars. You don't have to think about it too hard,
Except we have a couple hour-long podcasts thinking about it really hard.
I thought you knew that computer part. The Dathomirian Night Sister connector for their systems, for the space systems. You plug it into the back, it feeds, the magic goes inside, and then it does all the work. Really, the witch magic does all the work. The computer's just there to process it.
Yeah, you might say it's a gateway.
Oh God! Oh, that was awful. About to throw you through that gateway.
Yeah, but so that does lead us to the point where Morgan is like, okay, I'm going to go up to the ship, which, fun fact, the ring is the ship.
I was really thinking that there was going to be a bigger ship that was going to go in that ring. I was wrong.
I was like a Star Destroyer or something else, but nope, that was it.
I thought they were going to do the whole Exegol thing where it comes out of the water, That was one of my predictions I made in the show. I was like, what makes you so sure that there isn't something down there?
It does look really cool that, like, it comes out of the cloud barrier. It has to break atmosphere. So, like, they had to bring it down to get work done on it. So that, to me, that was actually a really cool sentiment for it. But that fight between Balin and Ahsoka was fantastic, and I think it really... One, you see Ahsoka again using Form 1, which now realizing that she's older, because she's going to be, in her 40s, 50s here?
I think we agreed that she's somewhere in her 50s.
Yeah, so
we really got to hammer the timeline down at some point.
She is older, and she's also... It felt like, hey, this is a strong opponent, and I really think maybe Form 1 is just the strongest stance, because it is meant to win very decisively. Like, it is I am here to swing and get one swing on you, and that's all I'm gonna need, especially someone using a lightsaber correctly.
Yeah.
Oh,
His
was it? Hold on, going back. Was it Ren and Sabine's fight, or Ahsoka's fight with Merrick, where the trees were getting cut down around them, and like they would just do the bamboo thing, like you'd see the slice go through, and then the tree would like.
I think it was.
fall.
I think it was Ahsoka and Merrick's fight. I can't be too sure because it was a very quick scene.
But
also, we didn't even mention the
that.
fact that Merrick was just propped up by Night Sister magic. By the way,
Okay, so here is my question to you, right? So that was the thing. Merrick evaporated.
yep.
You know who else evaporated? The first Inquisitor that Ahsoka beat in Tales of the Jedi, right?
Oh my, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I didn't notice that.
I'm wondering if some of them are just like harnessed chaos energy. I know you said Merrick was done after this. I'm betting Merrick is this is where they're going to start getting into that magic of, okay, no, so this is who he was when he was alive. He was, my theory was, is he Starkiller? My theory was going to be like, he was training somewhere, got a little overzealous, and killed the star of that, Jedi class. So he got called Starkiller before he was cast out. And he dies and comes back a little less himself. So that's how we get like Starkiller. Why isn't he as strong? Because, he's diluted now, and the Night Sisters have ripped him back and put him in multiple bodies. He's been multiple Inquisitors. I think that's kind of what they're going to go with there.
Yeah, I thought Merrick was just the friends we made along the way, really. I didn't really read into any of the theories of who is he because it never really just... I thought he was cool.
Yeah.
But the fact...
I want Sam Whitaker to have a real role.
I know you do. But I really just kind of thought that, he was a former Sith Inquisitor. The fact that he wasn't focused on too much throughout the series didn't really give me much to go on. So I thought he was just kind of a bad guy number 3 role,
Yeah, Sith Inquisitors haven't been threatening since the second season of Rebels, and I think it was more their numbers, not necessarily who or what they were.
Yeah, that's...
They are... I think I summed up perfectly. Inquisitors are like high school football stars who never get better than that one season.
Yeah, they've reached their potential cap, which is not very high.
And then they never trained anymore. They were told, okay, this is all you need to know, and that brute strength carried them a good way. And maybe they got some other training in there, but it was not going to be as technical as it is for a Jedi or full-bore Sith.
Yeah, that's actually what happened to Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, too. But that's a whole nother podcast. Yeah, I you said it perfectly there. The Sith themselves never allowed the Inquisitors to get any more powerful than that, because then they're seen as a threat to their place, and we all know that Sith don't take kindly to threats to their power.
No.
But yeah, the fight between Baylan and Ahsoka, I thought, while I enjoyed the droid battle between Huyang and the HK droids, the beauty of the fight between Ahsoka and Baylan, from how it starts with, Baylan's just sitting there waiting for her, hood up, weapons not drawn, nothing like that. And
he's standing behind the rock as she walks, then he goes over real quick and sits down when she gets on the other side to be like, I'm extra mysterious. Oh, hood up.
Can't forget the hood, Baylan, quick. It's I also thought it was funny that none of the droids were there for that confrontation at the start. All of them just scurried off.
it did feel weird. Like, all the computers and stuff that were there, none of it was around.
Yeah.
Like, almost like it's like, oh, we got the Wi-Fi set up, the transmitter's over there, and we're good.
Yeah, we're good. You know, it's all going through the orb. We get the first real confrontation between these two characters, and immediately Baylan goes for the emotional jugular, as you will. You know, Anakin spoke very highly of you. And then it's like, it's a shame that few would see what he would become. And I was like, first of all, how do you know that? I was under the impression that very few people knew about Anakin's demise, you know? I thought it was widely accepted from the majority of Jedi that he died during the Purge. Like, that was the official story anyway. So for Baylan to know that kind of blew my mind a bit. What a killer line, though.
Yes.
And
no, I think that was a really good cut to Ahsoka.
And, you know, Ahsoka's really trying to figure out, like, what's his motive, what's his horse, you know, his horse in the race. And, you know, he says that he's trying to secure the future. And Ahsoka replies with, well, that's ambitious. And for the first time, I think since Rebels, you have somebody else. I think that Baylan knows about the world between worlds, which we're going to get to, by the way, because the last 5 minutes of Ahsoka literally lit the internet on fire. So, but I think Ahsoka immediately knows what he's talking about when he says securing the future. You know, I think that she realizes that this goes above Thrawn, above anything. There's somebody that knows of this incredibly powerful tool that bends space and time, you know?
I think as the episode, and like reflecting back on it now, I'm less and less sure about Baylan's motivation. I think that Dave is going to kind of follow the Chiss Ascendancy, the other race that they were fighting within the original Heir to the Empire series. I do wish they would quit saying as an heir to the Empire.
It's getting kind of...
It's dropped a couple times. I'm like, I'm done with that.
We get it. We get that Thrawn's the heir to the Empire. You can just call him Thrawn. It's okay.
But I'm also... So in order to explain my theory, we have to jump ahead to... Ahsoka gets beaten after she touches magic fire metal and gets her hand horribly burned.
Oh, that looks so painful, too. Incredibly painful. Like, I cringed a little bit while watching that.
I've got my own, like, I'll see what they use to justify that later. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting it to be magic, because I think that's where we're starting to go, is like, what's the difference between witchcraft and the Force? And I think anyone who can use witchcraft can also use the Force.
Yeah, it's less
and
than
vice
you think.
versa.
So I'm with you there.
But Ahsoka kind of gets out for the count, and Sabine picks it up, and Baylan starts manipulating Sabine, and he closes his eyes and then starts talking about Ezra, finding their friend. I think Baylan has the ability to read people. So when Ahsoka was actually walking up, he's like, oh, you're Anakin's
Padawan,
Padawan. She's struggling with the fact that she walked away from him. Well, what happened after you walked away? Oh, well, he became the terror of the galaxy, known as Darth Vader.
Just a little bit.
And then, oh, I also, tried to save him again, too late, almost got killed by him. I think in the next episode, we're going to find out that Baylan has no idea. He's like, oh, I know Darth Vader. I know Anakin. Who didn't know Anakin? Like, his exploits were legendary.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think he knew that because that's what's so up on Ahsoka, and that's what Ahsoka is wrestling with, and anything that she does now is purely trying to make up for the fact that she could not save Anakin. She couldn't live up to his expectations, and then failed again with Sabine.
Well said.
And Sabine is just kind of missing, Ezra.
Well, a big reason why the fight goes the way it did, and I'm gonna go just before Ahsoka touches the magic glowy Night Sister orb of glowiness. When Shin shows up after disappearing like a magic trick, like Batman basically, in the forest, Ahsoka immediately thinks that Sabine's dead, because all of a sudden Shin shows up and there's no Sabine, which I think is very telling of their relationship. I think Dave's done a really good job of showing that Ahsoka really doesn't trust Sabine to hold her own. And in that moment, I think that's when we see Ahsoka use the dark side. Like it, you could see it in her face, and then she slams Shin into a wall, knocking her unconscious, and is just going after Baylan. Because Ahsoka initially wins that fight, and that's how she gets to the orb. I don't know why she didn't just try to destroy it like Baylan did. Like, you have a lightsaber. Why are you trying to grab things that are glowing on fire? Magic fire? Not smart. Rookie mistake, really, actually. Let's paint it like it is. Which I thought was really cool. The intricacies of the fight itself. I don't put it past Ahsoka to use the dark side. I think she knows her limits with it, because of how she how she's made her way through the galaxy. But I thought that was really cool, but also frightening to see. But yeah, then Sabine shows up, and this is after Ahsoka burns her hand. She's on the edge of the cliff, and Baylan gets her. Like, Ahsoka's down for the count, and that's where you get the title Fallen Jedi, by the way, because Ahsoka fell off a cliff. Dun, 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 dun.
And also, looking at the two, I do like the fact that both. So and here's the other thing that I was looking at here. Both Ahsoka and Baylan are the Fallen Jedi, right? And there might even be a third Fallen Jedi later in the episode. But they're both Fallen Jedi. They both think that the Order was wrong, because Baylan sits there and goes, no, what the Order became and what it was at the end was not the Jedi Order, and it was wrong. Ahsoka felt the same way. Mm-hmm. They both have apprentices.
Mm-hmm. Different goals, though. Different goals. I think you're also right. They both are Fallen Jedi, but I think they both view the other as the Fallen Jedi. Like, their path is the right one,
Yeah. I still don't think we know what Baylan's is. I don't know
I can't wait to learn more
he's
about
like... I don't know if it's going to be like, no, I believe in Thrawn, because Thrawn is... Thrawn can unite us all. I don't know if there is a... Because in the original book, he was a little mad after being trapped on a planet to defend some Jedi artifacts until he was relieved by either Thrawn or Vader or somebody came up and said, like, hey, you're out.
Yeah, we can take it from here.
He was he went a little mad being alone. So I'm wondering if we're getting the madness, but it's just in the guise, like almost like Dooku, how you like him, where it's like the evil was in the guise of like, no, we're doing the wrong thing, but we're also fighting a war, so there's necessity to what we have to do now in order to reach these higher goals. So I'm very curious to see where Dave is taking the overarching story, but I do think the foil of Baylan and Ahsoka, it's very hard to tell them apart as far as motivation and their own histories.
Yeah. And I think you're right that we're about to learn more about Balin. I hope so anyway. You're spot on. I didn't approach it initially as Balin really being able to read people through the Force like that, but you're totally right. I mean, the fact that Ahsoka was coming up slowly like that, it makes it very plausible, given what he did to Sabine, that he's able to read people. And this entire series, and you gotta give me the floor here for a second, because this is something I feel very, very passionately about. The amount of time that has elapsed between the end of Rebels and the start of Ahsoka is a good chunk of time, because when we leave Sabine, she had her family back. They were going to liberate Mandalore, which they did. They were going to find Ezra. We learned that Ahsoka started her Jedi training. All of this stuff. And then Balin drops the line of, your family's dead. And I can't stress that line enough, because, Sabine's a part of a very powerful, very well-known Mandalorian clan, Clan Ren. And to think that her family perished on Mandalore, and as Balin framed it, died because Ahsoka didn't trust Sabine. And I think in that line, he's saying, if I had to guess how this went in the past, Sabine was probably in the middle of her Jedi training. Think Luke in Empire Strikes Back. And she gets the premonitions of her family being in danger because of the Night of the Thousand Tears? The one that killed Mandalore? When the Empire, firebombed it?
That... Because Rebels, Mandalore was still a thing, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah, Night of a Thousand Tears came after Rebels. That was Gideon's doing. Yeah, it wasn't instantly. It was I think it was a few years after. It was sometime during, I think it was right around Return of the Jedi, somewhere in that instance.
In that because I'm trying to think where Rebels ends. Rebels ended before Return of the Jedi, and it's
technically the very end, when you have the end credit scene with Sabine and Ahsoka. That is after Return of the Jedi, that scene specifically. But when the whole Lothal event, that actually occurred right around the time of A New Hope.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that's why Thrawn's not in...
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how, that's why you don't see Thrawn in the... I mean, obviously Thrawn wasn't a thought-out character back in the day like that, but that's how it went. So they were expecting...
Return of the Jedi would have happened.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, they were expecting another attack. It was Sabine, I'm pretty sure, narrating this at the end of Rebels, but they were expecting the Empire to come and attack Lothal, but it never came. Because, the Empire had other problems dealing with the rest of the rebellion and stuff like that, and then eventually they were defeated, so...
I remember that, but because now you're saying, the Night of a Thousand Tears, and I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, so that means that happened after... So that was probably, a couple years after Return of the Jedi, before, though, the Empire was as fragmented as it was, because that means if that scene happens and in Lothal at the end of Return of the Jedi, hey, everything's done and over with, come with me, okay.
Yeah, so you see how this is really shaping up, and that's why I was questioning why Sabine was running so much and why she seems so broken in this show. That's why. Balin said it perfectly without much to it. I think that's really how it went, is that Ahsoka didn't let Sabine try and save her family during the Night of 1,000 Tears. And if I had to guess, that's probably a lot of what ended up separating them. You know, I'm willing to bet that their training was great in the beginning. The Night of 1,000 Tears happens, her family dies, she can't get over the attachment, and then Ahsoka and Sabine go their separate ways. And
no, that's a great. Whew.
Yeah, and I was wondering the entire time in The Mandalorian this past season, where was Ursa? Where was Clan Ren? Nobody mentioned them. They weren't anywhere to be found. So, you know, initially I thought maybe they were on. I'm blanking on the moon that her family lives on, that orbits
In the Mandalore sector. Yeah,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about.
Really pretty, by the way. They had a nice estate, very snowy. And so I was wondering, like, maybe they were on their own planet. They had something else going on. No, they were dead.
And we never hear of a Ren in the last season of The Mandalorian when all the clans start coming together.
None.
Because no one was like flying anything of Sabine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And you got to think, you know, Sabine's father was being held captive on Mandalore by the Empire. They rescued him in Rebels. And like Clan Ren is a ancient family too of Mandalore. Ancient. Been around for a very long time. Generations, centuries, you know. I'm willing to bet they probably go back to the Old Republic and the Mandalorian Jedi Wars and all that jazz. So, like, that's not to be taken lightly. And that really... Baylan makes a lot of sense when he's seducing Sabine to the dark side. And a lot of people have theorized this, and I'm with them, that I think Sabine's more powerful in the dark side because of her emotions, because of her fiery Mandalorian spirit. I still don't think like she's anywhere close to being powerful with the Force at all. But if you're going to pick between the light side and the dark side, she's going to be more powerful with the dark side because of who she is as a person and what she's gone through. She can feed off that anger and hate. And the seduction of Sabine was masterfully executed by Baylan. And I love how you're right. It's like he puts away his weapon. He reads Sabine through the Force, and he takes a jab at Ahsoka, and it's essentially like, hey, I'm going to reunite you with Ezra. You have my word. And so, you know, they get the final coordinates. Baylan destroys the magic orb of magic, and then you get that scene of Shin coming to after being knocked unconscious throughout this entire thing, and starts to force choke Sabine. And Baylan's like, "No, I'm going to keep my word. We're going to see this through. She's coming with us," which I thought was really cool too, by the way.
I think that was great.
Yeah, Baylan's quickly becoming
of a word.
Yeah, Baylan's, because we talked about this. I think it was 2 podcast episodes ago. I am a sucker for those with honor in the Star Wars universe. That's why I love Dooku for so long. He reminds me of a chivalrous fallen Jedi, just like Dooku was.
Oh, that's why I like the Mandalorian, where it's like, no, this is the way. Like, okay, we hashed it out. We fought.
Yeah.
And the only time that Din was cast out was like, no, you're an apostate. You broke the law we've all agreed to, and it's a very honor bound code. Like, hey, follow the rules. That's the only real rule. And
you broke
that, it's like, well, but even still between them, like when they start coming for him, and the armorer's there with oh god, what's his name? The bigger guy who I love.
He's a Vizsla.
A Vizsla, yeah, and
Paz.
There is
Maz?
Paz Vizsla,
Paz.
Yeah, Paz Vizsla. But you see this. No, we agreed to this code. This is the code we're gonna do, and I'm waiting for Baylan to kind of be he's gonna go to from like he's gonna be the other side of the Jedi coin where it's like lawful evil, like where you go so like you're following the law so much that you're like, hey dude, we need to follow some things in the spirit, and he goes no, letter, and the second he goes letter, it flips to lawful evil.
Yep.
Or lawful neutral, maybe.
Yeah, and I've been a real fan of how he's trained Shin throughout this entire show. I do love how he still adheres to a lot of Jedi teachings, which we've mentioned too with the Padawan braid, and just the way that he goes about things. And then we get into the scene of the bad guys winning, which we don't see a lot in Star Wars too often. But, you know, the ring makes its way out into space. Hera gets there with her X-Wing crew. And seeing them come out of hyperspace was super cool. First of all, seeing the cockpit of the Ghost is like seeing the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon for me.
I agree.
So many memories have been made in that cockpit. Seeing it in live action is beautiful. Also, it is apparently Bring Your Kid to a War Zone Day. Love that too. Granted, you know, the Ghost is a frigate. It can take a beating. It's taken a beating. But you know, the ring's about to make the jump to hyperspace, and Hera seems almost surprised that they are. They're like, oh, they're gonna go right through us, and go right through them. They did.
Because they stayed in that close tag. Oh. And the fact that it looked like an EMP, like, no, something just went close to light speed, manipulated time around you. Mm-hmm. And then, like, you're also thinking the massive amount output of energy and whatever is going between everything there. It was, yeah. And also the fact that it threw around. Like, the force of it was so great. Because there's no air in space, right? Mm-hmm. So I think this kind of gets onto your theory about, like, wormholes or faster than light travel not being so much of a distance as it's an energy being manipulated in another way.
Yeah.
Because the X-Wings that are there, when it flies past them, it sends them spinning. So that means it has to be manipulating matter in such a way that it can cause things to, like, fly like that, unless we're going to use the idea that it's like, well, that wouldn't make any sense either. Anyway,
no, and Carson says as much when he's, you know, over the comms, and he's saying we're detecting a massive surge in energy. It's like something they've never seen before. So it makes sense for that ring to really cause that kind of reaction, you know, that it's manipulating matter in that way.
And it makes me think, like, maybe FTL is traditional in the galaxy, but the second you go outside of the galaxy and the path that they're following, maybe because of how often that path is traveled, it's different, because the Purge will, you know, warp. They don't. Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking. I'm sure. I'm hoping we learn more about, like, the intricacies of how they're getting to this other galaxy. But I think it's one or even two of the X-Wing pilots, like, they're killed in this.
Yeah.
And do you know how bad that looks for Hera? You have a general who directly disobeyed the New Republic government, and in doing so, got two of her pilots killed. Like, that's a court-martial waiting to happen right there. Like,
oh, it completely is.
Hera's toast. And then you have Jace right after saying that he's a bad feeling about this. There it is.
Force sensitive, right there.
And granted, Han says that a lot in the original trilogy, but Han's just a smuggler. So, you know, he's used to bad feelings about things all the time. It's Han Solo, for Christ's sake. But yeah. And then it goes back to the planet's surface. And I originally was thinking, like, oh, we're going to see Ahsoka, like, scaling her way back up this cliff. That's what I thought. I was like, you know, she went off a cliff. She's fine.
Or laying unconscious, like at one of the outcrops.
Yeah. Well, she was laying unconscious somewhere, all right. Which, by the way, the transition of that scene was beautiful from the waves
to the waves to the water on the pathway.
Yeah, to like the bridge. And then all of a sudden, you see her laying there, and immediately I got chills up and down my body, and I was like, "Oh my God, she's in the world between worlds again." And then you hear Hayden Christensen's, "Hey, Snips."
Oh, you're here earlier than I expected you to be.
Oh.
Which, I'm not going to lie, that makes me think Ahsoka's not going to live to the end of Ahsoka.
Oh, I don't think so. I think her plot armor's coming to the end, but seeing Hayden Christensen, also the de-aging they did that man was not great though. How do you de-age him in Ahsoka but not de-age him in the flashback in Obi-Wan?
Go back and I would say go back and watch the flashback, because it's like the original de-aging of Luke looked bad, and it wasn't until they hired the guy who could do really good deep fakes that it looked good. But I also think what made this de-aging so much more necessary is they had to make him have both the Anakin from Clone Wars that we would have known and the Anakin Ahsoka would have known.
Fair.
He kind of had to have both looks.
Which I thought they did a decent job. But oh my God. Like, oh my God. I did not expect. I thought we were going to get maybe like a flashback or like his voice or something at some point during this show. That was out of left field. Did not expect episode 4 of Ahsoka. We're in the world between worlds and Anakin fucking Skywalker's there. Pardon my French, everybody.
I think the next episode is going to be entirely Anakin Skywalker with like sprinkled bits of like, oh, this is
what's going on
like
in the show right now, basically.
Yeah. Here's Hera like finding or like, you know,
probably facing the consequences.
Here's over here. I don't think so. I think Hera's going to be like going after Thrawn, or they're going to court martial him because, well, you'll do it when I get back, and then she leaves.
Yeah. Fun. So this podcast is going to go. Let's see. We're recording this the night of September 6th. It's going to be out on the 7th, probably.
Yes, it'll be out tomorrow.
So for all the listeners who listen to this on the 7th, Disney Plus is actually dropping a title called Master and Apprentice. It's a feature on Disney Plus featuring Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship. So I'm not sure if you heard about that yet, but I'm not sure what time it's dropping on Friday, but be on the lookout for it.
Is it live action?
I think so.
Okay, well, you guys might get another like longer episode or a bonus podcast this week.
Yeah, like a nice little featurette from us.
Yeah.
But what really... Also, I'm sorry, you can't ignore Kevin Kiner's amazing score of the show, but at the end of the Ahsoka episode, it's the Lord Vader theme.
Because she has to come to terms with that, because let's face it, this is probably the Anakin that she knew. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are points where like his face goes to shadow, and the shadow like just you see the silhouette of Vader's helmet, and then turn back to see his face, like enough to be like, no, these are two parts of him, and you did get the best parts of him. What happened wasn't your fault, but, and I was explaining this, Obi-Wan got admonished of any guilt. Anakin says, nope, this was my choice. I'm Darth Vader. I killed Anakin. Kill the past if you need to. Let it die. Ahsoka
never got that. She got blamed.
She ran away from him, felt it happen, and then when she found Darth Vader in the future, found out who he is like, I need to save you, and then gets killed.
Yep.
So I think we're going to get a long episode of this, and it's almost entirely going to be exposition and dialogue between Ahsoka and Hayden Christensen, and I'm betting that they're gonna have like, hey, no, you got to remember that time where like you and Barriss were, you know, I had to trust you guys even though I couldn't be with you,
and
you need to.
And I was gonna say,
trust Sabine.
Beautifully said, by the way, because, like I said, Ahsoka's trust in Sabine has never been there in this series. And even just talking about Hayden Christensen right now, as the prequel fanboy I am, always will be, growing up with the prequels, they are my movies, I love the original trilogy. Mm-hmm. They're beautifully made, but the prequels are my movies, Like, Revenge of the Sith was one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters, And actually, it was the first Star Wars movie I saw in theaters. Never thought I was going to be able to see another Star Wars movie in theaters, actually, until Disney came along. But just talking about Hayden Christensen and Anakin and the world between worlds, I have had chills while talking about this for the last 10 minutes. Like,
it's been fantastic.
It is amazing. We're getting into some of the most incredible Star Wars content I think we will ever see, and this is how I felt when we saw this sort of thing on Rebels, because you got the echoes of the past in the world between worlds when Ezra's exploring it for the first time, and this was mind-blowing stuff then. It's mind-blowing stuff now, and it's going to be such a monumental episode next week that they're actually, and I sent you this earlier, but they're actually doing a limited release of this episode in theaters next Tuesday.
I'm wondering if it's going to be a long episode.
I hope so.
Like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
I don't know if it's going to be quite that long, but if it's not over an hour, I'm going to riot. And I actually tried to look into getting tickets for those. It's only at a select few theaters across the country. There was one in DC. It's already booked. The only one that you can get passes to still is in Seattle, Washington. So if you're listening to this from Seattle, Washington, good luck. But yeah, this episode, if I had to give it a ranking, it's got to be a 12 out of 10. This was Dave Filoni in his bag, progressing Star Wars the way George Lucas would have wanted it to, And
I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10.
An 8 out of... Really? Oh.
An 8 out of 10.
That's surprising.
There are a couple MacGuffin things that, because plot. And then, like I said, the smoke screen thing, I'm like, okay, Act 1, we're now in Act 2. Here it is again. Okay, this is coming back in Act 3. And like, that's just me kind of being like, I got it in the beginning, Dave. You didn't need to do it again. Also, Sabine has her lightsaber. I don't think Baylan knows that.
Oh, I think they know it.
I don't think they know that she has the lightsaber.
I think they're smart enough to do a pat down. Because she was in cuffs, so,
But they showed her grabbing the lightsaber. They didn't show her grabbing the blasters. The blasters went away. That was her red herring to them.
Oh, well, I guess we'll see. But, I'm sorry, but just the fact that, we saw... Ahsoka died on that cliff, didn't she? You can't have a character... If she's dead, if she got how is she back in the world between worlds? Was it maybe that Anakin pulled her there before it was too late,
I had someone pull up the theory that maybe Sidious did it.
Oh, there's no way.
I mean, he helped bridge a gap between two distant cousins things.
Yeah, fair.
So, I'm not sure. The owl hasn't been in this yet either.
Well, actually,
her spirit guide.
When they were, when they went back to the ship and they had that scene with Huang calling out for Lady Tano, I think that was from the owl's perspective. And I've seen that, I think, a couple of times on Twitter as well, is that it was just such an interesting camera angle for them to portray that maybe Morai, that scene is being in the eyes of Morai, maybe. So...
And they're going to, show that she's been there. I'm betting Ahsoka's going to be like, you left me at some point, and it's going to be like, no, she's been here the entire time, Snips. I'm sorry. Anakin's going to be like that.
I think we're about to get our minds blown. And I'm so ready for it. This is This episode was everything I've wanted the Ahsoka series to be. I still thought it was pretty great leading up to this, but this episode was incredible.
They did a good palate cleanser, and then they went right into this. I agree.
Yeah.
I think this was a stellar episode.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody in their mother's mother freaking out about this episode really goes to show how well done it was. Which is why this podcast has dragged on a little bit longer than our other ones. So, thanks for hanging with us, everybody. But there was a lot to get through.
There was. And of course, we will be back next week. If you guys enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check out the Discord. Try to have some cool conversations in there. Feel free to email us at thewrongbuttonpodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions about this or have any thoughts of your own. I'd actually really like to read those instead of work emails. Anything you want to go out on, Tyler?
If there are any people out there listening to us from their Samsung smart fridge, I'd love to hear from you too. Please email Wrong Button. I'd love to hear from you.
Remember, take care of your friends here and your friends elsewhere. You're all winners out there. Keep it weird. Have a fantastic rest of your night, everybody.